If folks want to come to America, they should love it, they should share its values, and they should want to add value immediately. And far too many people who are coming do not share those values, and I believe it is a threat. The barbarians are no longer at the gate. They are now inside.
Wow. So you're calling Cenk Uygur a barbarian. Well, given he's here, let me bring him into this. Cenk, what is your response to that?
Yeah, no, I don't mind because I agree that there are barbarians inside the gate, and that's Randy Fine. Randy Fine is a sick terrorist sympathizer. In fact, if he wants America to do terrorism on Israel's behalf, he has said we should nuke Gaza. That's killing millions of innocent children and human beings and civilians, but he doesn't care. He only cares about Israeli lives.
In today's video, Cenk Uygur absolutely destroys Randy Fine on the Piers Morgan show. Randy Fine tries pushing the same one-sided talking points about Israel, completely ignoring the massive civilian death toll in Gaza. But Cenk Uygur fires back hard, grounding his arguments in what human rights groups and the UN have been saying for months: the scale of destruction, the targeting of civilian infrastructure, and the blockade aren't self-defense. They're a humanitarian catastrophe. So let's dive in and watch how Cenk Uygur shuts down Randy Fine on the Piers Morgan show.
By the way, the Israelis have murdered now nearly a dozen Americans in the West Bank. No accountability from our government. And people like Randy Fine say we owe Israel. We owe Israel a genocide. We owe Israel $300 billion. We owe them no accountability at all when they kill American citizens. They had a pervert Israeli government official that came here in Vegas and tried to rape our children, and we let him go. That's insane. Randy Fine, are you asking for the sick Israeli government to return the pedophile so he could face justice here? No, Randy Fine represents Israel, not America. Everybody knows that. He also said we should starve all the Gazans. So he's right. There's a sickness inside our government. AIPAC and the Israeli lobby have given to 90% of Congress. They've given him $500,000, and that was a giant waste because he works for Israel already. So, Randy, we're all sick of your terrorist sympathies towards Israel. They have committed 75 October 7th. Their civilian kill ratio is 83%, worse than Hamas, worse than any terrorist organization. They have murdered 256 journalists, more than all other conflicts combined. They murdered 104 people today, including 46 children. They burned them alive. And we're sick of Israeli terrorism, and we're sick of people like you forcing good Americans. I love this country. I didn't come here to be a occupied territory of Israel. I came here because I love America and the freedom and the equality and the justice that comes with it. If you think your grandparents who came here were not loyal to America, that's your business. But no, most of the people that come here come because we absolutely love this country and not Israel. Why don't you go to the Knesset, brother? Everybody knows you love Israel and you despise Palestinians and you love Israeli terrorism. Why don't you move to Tel Aviv already?
Okay. All right, Cenk. Let Randy Fine respond. Randy.
Well, thank you, Piers, and thank you for the surprise debate. I actually enjoy that. Look, there's a concept in Islam called taqiyya where you're allowed to lie in advance of your political views. And you just got a great crash course. All of those things were nonsense. But the notion that I am more loyal to Israel than I am the United States is part of it. Israel is fighting a war of civilization on our behalf. The reason we need a Jewish state of Israel is because of the Muslims that surround it. And so I stand with Israel because I believe Israel is fighting the same fight that we have here in the United States, the same fight that people like Mandami and Cenk, wealthy Muslims who move here in order to change the complex and the nature of our country, are going to do it. And I won't apologize for that. I am very proud of my views. I'm very proud of my faith. I'm proud to be the first member of Congress in the history of the United States to wear a yarmulke, which you may be able to see on my head. And I know that drives them crazy because we're not supposed to do that. But they gave me the nickname the Hebrew Hammer for a reason, and I'm not going to be afraid to use it.
Okay, for example, the idea that Palestinian civilians are some kind of barbarian threat is directly contradicted by the US intelligence community's own assessments, which repeatedly say the vast majority of Palestinian casualties in Gaza are non-combatants. In fact, the State Department's internal leak from April confirmed that Israeli strikes have hit civilian infrastructure at a rate far beyond anything the US military would consider acceptable. That's not defense. That's a disproportionate force, exactly what human rights orgs like Amnesty, HRW, and even Israeli NGOs like B'Tselem have been documenting for years. And the claim that Israel is fighting on behalf of America, that's just historically false. The US has condemned Israel's actions at least 45 times at the UN before vetoing its own condemnations. And every intelligence assessment since 9/11 says US support for Israeli actions, especially in Gaza, increases terrorist recruitment against Americans. That's not my opinion. That's from the CIA and FBI. Plus, Randy keeps leaning on this trope that criticizing the Israeli government equals sign attacking Jewish people. But some of Israel's fiercest critics today are Israeli Jews, former Air Force pilots, former Shin Bet chiefs, academics, journalists, all warning that Netanyahu's government has become authoritarian and dangerous, when Israeli human rights groups like Yesh Din literally conclude that the occupation regime constitutes apartheid. How is it bigotry to repeat their findings? And the part about deporting or mistrusting Muslims, completely detached from reality. Muslim Americans serve in the US military, run hospitals, teach schools, and statistically commit fewer violent crimes per capita than native-born, non-immigrant populations. That's not emotional. That's FBI crime data.
Oh, but Randy,
So
fine. When you said I don't give a shit, hang on, Cenk. Randy, fine. When you said I don't give a shit about Gazans, were you proud of that statement?
Well, I think the context there is Gaza attacked Israel on October 7th. Of the thousands of people who streamed across the border to kill every man, woman, and child that they could, many of them, thousands of them, were not, quote unquote, card-carrying members of Hamas. And so when you start a war and you are losing the war, if you do not like what that is doing to you, then you surrender in that war. Gaza chose to be the enemy. Gaza chose to attack Western civilization. And no, I didn't care what happened. It was my view that if they didn't like it, they needed to surrender. Something, by the way, they still haven't done, because yesterday the Gazans killed another IDF soldier in a place that even under the peace deal, they are allowed to be.
Why do you call them?
I don't care
Randy,
historically
Randy,
about the Germans.
Randy,
Yes.
fine. But I've not had actually any guest. I have to be honest here. I've not had any guest who has used the phrase Gazans rather than Hamas, given it was specifically Hamas that perpetrated the appalling terror attacks on October the 7th. It is Hamas that has the governmental power still in Gaza. It's not the Gazan people. It's not the civilian population. So why are you deliberately conflating Gazans in totality with Hamas?
Because that is a propaganda lie. I'll give you 2 points. Number one, thousands of the people who streamed across the border on October 7th were not members of Hamas. That has been well established. Thousands of people came across the border who were so-called civilians. And second, polling just came out today. That said if an election were held in Gaza today, Hamas would win overwhelmingly. Does that mean every Gazan supports Hamas? No, it does not. But to try to differentiate the two attempts to imply that some small percentage of Gazans support or like Hamas, that is not what the data suggests. And we should not allow us to say these two are completely different, Gazans and Hamas, because they are not.
All right, so Randy, fine. So when, for example, the United States, along with my country, the United Kingdom, and others, waged what many believe to have been an illegal war against Iraq in 2003, with the catastrophic consequences of 1 million deaths, the rise of ISIS, and so on, is your position then that in that circumstance, every single civilian American is equally culpable to the military that waged that illegal war, and therefore any repercussions against any Americans on mainland America would be justified?
First off, the idea that Gazans are Hamas has been disproven by every credible source, including Israeli intelligence. Shin Bet, the IDF, the US intelligence community, all have said repeatedly that the majority of Gazans are civilians with no formal affiliation to Hamas. Even within Gaza, pre-war polling by the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research showed widespread disillusionment with both Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. Support fluctuates based on who is bombing them, not because people are signing up to join militant groups. That nuance just gets erased in Randy's narrative, because acknowledging it would make collective punishment impossible to justify. Second, Randy keeps referencing individuals who crossed the border on October 7th as proof that the entire population is culpable. But multiple independent investigations, including one by Haaretz, showed that many of the unauthorized border breaches were caused by failures in Israel's automated defense systems and chaotic information gaps, not an orchestrated mass uprising by civilians. Even Israeli commanders have said most breaches involved opportunistic individuals after the defenses collapsed, not coordinated militants. That doesn't excuse violence, but it absolutely destroys the idea that all 2.2 million people signed up for war as one hive mind. And the polling point Randy brings up completely misrepresented. Post-October 7th polling among Palestinians shows a temporary spike in support for Hamas as a reaction to the scale of destruction, not ideological alignment. It's the same phenomenon political scientists call rallying around the flag. When people are being bombed relentlessly, they tend to express support for whoever is standing up to the entity bombing them, even if they hate that group's politics. We saw the same dynamic in Afghanistan when support for the Taliban spiked during US airstrikes. It does not mean the civilian population magically morphs into militants.
Because that's what you're saying.
No, it's not what I'm saying, but I would note in the war that Israel has fought against Gaza, the percentage of civilians who have died versus the percentage of combatants is far lower than we saw in that war. Yet the outrage perpetrated against Israel in a war where almost 1,000 IDF soldiers have died in order to minimize the casualties in Gaza. If Israel had wanted to wipe Gaza off the map, it could have done that, but it didn't because it wanted to minimize the death that was over there. The only difference between Gaza and Israel is Israel has the capability to do what it is accused of and chooses not to. Gaza does not have the capability to execute the genocide that it wants to because Israel stops it. That is the fundamental difference between the two sides.
All right, Cenk, your final response before we let Randy Fine go.
Yeah, so as you've seen, he's constantly referring to the Muslims that surround Israel. They're the real problem. It's open bigotry. He's not even hiding it. And then he'll go and hide behind the human shields of good, innocent Jewish Americans and say, oh, no, if you criticize Israel, you're actually criticizing Jewish Americans, which no one did. It's the dirtiest trick in the using the anti-Semitism card to protect his form of terrorism that he supports, which Jewish Americans do not support. And so he says it's okay to kill the Gazans, which is collective punishment. He's not only said to nuke them and starve them, but he just said it right here on this air. He's a deeply sick man who wants to put a moral stain on this country by forcing us to fund the genocide of the Palestinians. They have already done 75 October 7th, but it's never enough murder for Randy Fine. They've already killed a stadium full. Imagine 20,000 murdered children lit on fire. Their heads exploded. Israel did all of that. And Randy Fine is saying it's not enough. Americans, go work another shift because you got to send Israel more money to kill more Palestinian children and put that on America's soul. Don't listen to this guy. He doesn't believe in America. His whole point is to make sure that we fund his beloved Israel and their sick, disgusting terrorism.
Just call me a dirty
Israel
Jew.
is the largest terrorist entity. Nobody said that. You're the only one who says it. You're the sick, disgusting Muslim bigot. No one wants anti-Semitism. The only person who wants anti-Semitism is you because you want to hide behind it. You bring up your yarmulke when no one else did. No one minds your yarmulke, except you brought it up as if like you're some sort of victim. You're the one who wants to nuke over a million
I'm not
people.
A victim at all.
You're not a victim.
I relish
You're a disgusting terrorist sympathizer.
Like you.
The IDF itself admitted to using 2,000-pound bombs in populated zones, the exact kind of munitions the US military restricts heavily because of their enormous blast radius, pretending that it's targeted is just rewriting physics, and the whole Israel could wipe Gaza off the map but chooses not to argument. That's not a defense. That's literally the classic justification authoritarian regimes use to sanitize their own excesses. Well, we could be worse, so be grateful. Meanwhile, Randy keeps trying to blur the line between civilians and combatants, but data from US intelligence, his own side's intelligence, contradicts him. The CIA estimated that at least half of Gaza's dead are women and children. Independent satellite analysis shows over 60% of Gaza's housing destroyed or damaged beyond use. That is not the result of precision. It's the result of an air campaign that treats civilian neighborhoods as disposable, and the claim that Gaza chose to attack as if 2.2 million people held a democratic referendum before October 7th. Come on, Gaza hasn't had elections since 2006. The Bush administration pressured Mahmoud Abbas to cancel them because everyone knew Hamas might win again. That's the real political backdrop. People stuck under authoritarian rule with no electoral mechanism to remove it. So when Cenk calls out extremist rhetoric and collective punishment, he's not pulling it out of thin air. He's pointing to a giant pile of documented evidence that right-wing politicians like Randy Fine don't want to deal with because it completely destroys the fantasy of moral clarity they're selling. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.